Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. I believe in the power of storytelling to bring the retail industry to life. I'll bring insights, perspectives, and experiences from some of the retail industry's most innovative and influential voices each week. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Live from a boisterous NRF Big Show trade show floor in New York City, Tim Mason, CEO of Eagle Eye and former Tesco CMO, is back on the podcast. While this is not Tim's first time on the podcast, it is the first time we've had the pleasure of meeting in person. We catch up and discuss post-COVID, consumer loyalty, and sorting through performance data in an inflationary retail environment. Let's listen in now. All right, Tim, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you?
I'm okay. You catch me at the end of a
long day
at NRF, not long into my US visit, so a bit of jet lag, a few paces under my belt, but all good. Had a great day.
But it's great to meet you in person. You've been on the podcast twice. Your voice has been on twice, but like I said, it's great to meet you in person.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you too. I think you came on my podcast as well.
That's right. I've been on your podcast.
We're sort of old podcast friends, but have never met. So
That's right.
Which is, I guess, a bit the nature of the modern world, but it's nice to meet.
It is nice to get back together. So for those maybe who haven't heard your podcast with me, or your podcast, or my podcast, tell us a bit about who you are and what you do for a living.
So my name's Tim Mason. I'm the CEO of a business called Eagle Eye, which is a digital marketing business, a promotions platform. We do loyalty, personalized promotions, subscriptions, things like that. Just acquired before Christmas, so I'm super excited. A French business called Untie Knots, which again is a promotional, personalized strategy promotions business, based in France. Very, very strong in the French market. It's got some great French clients, and we are hopeful that we can sort of help them expand further. In my past, I was a retailer. Most of my career with Tesco.
Yep. And you were CMO at Tesco, right?
I was CMO, I was deputy CEO.
Yeah.
I was the Clubcard guy. So my background is really in marketing, and for more than half my career in loyalty.
And so what was it like? I'm just kind of curious, moving to the other side of the table, to the dark side or the light side, from being the retailer to being the vendor. I mean, you come with a unique perspective because you've walked in your now client's shoes. Talk about that a little bit. What was that experience like for you? Was it a big adjustment?
Well, I could say a bloody nightmare, couldn't I? But I think one of the things I remember in the late 90s, probably, we established what was called corporate purchasing, but became procurement. Because what we realized, and this was something that I think initially came out of the motor industry back in those days, was whilst we were extremely good at buying the products that we sold to consumers, we were not terribly good at buying the products not for resale. And somehow it fell to the guy who was in charge of marketing and a number of other things to set that up and organize it.
But you probably had a fairly large budget with lots of external suppliers, so that's probably why you got tapped for your role.
And I was actually responsible for the building and maintenance of stores and the whole property portfolio.
Oh wow!
So it was an even bigger. But it's a sort of be careful what you wish for, because of course now purchasing and procurement is the bane of my life.
Yeah. Strategic sourcing. They still call it strategic sourcing.
I mutter things like, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing and stuff like that. But so no, it's a big change.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you realise is, the period I was there, I was very fortunate. We were a very successful business. One of the hallmarks, I think, of our business was that we made decisions very quickly. Now, they might not always have been positive, but we made decisions very quickly. And one of the great frustrations of doing what I do now is
a longer sales cycle than you'd like.
How long it takes people.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, on the one hand, there's a lot of forces that would point retailers to make faster than slower decisions because the market's moving pretty quick. But in some markets, perhaps even in Canada, where the scale is such that you can't afford to make the same decision twice, is that the conservative nature of it, or is it a confusion? What do you as you've watched this evolve, what do you make of the long sales cycle? Is it too long? Are we too conservative?
My argument is you only learn by doing.
Mm-hmm.
So all the time you're chatting and not doing, you're not learning.
Right.
And so elapsed time is a real cost. It doesn't appear to be, but in my view, it is a real cost.
Well, it's as much in some ways a strategic risk as doing something. Doing nothing is, I would argue, a bigger strategic risk.
I think there's an element. I think the important thing to try and do is to make decisions which are not betting the ranch, which are positioned in such a way that this month we're doing this thing. And if you do it for this month, and consumers go, oh, I really like that one. Oh,
let's do it again
next month.
I mean,
and in 5 years' time, funnily enough, you're still doing it. You know. But to give yourself room and latitude to move, to be agile, in fact, rather than feeling that every decision is sort of life-changing, career-threatening, whatever.
And I guess that feeds into the idea of an MVP, a minimal viable product versus the final delivered thing, right?
I agree with that. I think that is true. And I think that, so in part, I think our job is to try, if we can, to de-risk the decisions that we make around buying our product. So can we, you could argue, I think, and I do argue, that the acquisition that we've made, Anti-Knots, enables you to really drink from the personalized digital marketing cup without having to make a till integration, a POS integration, which you have to do it through Eagle Eye.
Right.
Now, what Eagle Eye offers you ultimately is much richer, much more seamless, but you can get in and you can try it through this new business that you purchased.
So that was a very strategic acquisition for you.
I think so, yeah.
Right?
I'm hoping, I mean, you know.
Early days.
Till the fat lady sings, but that's...
But it wasn't about buying market, in other words, I frame it differently, you weren't buying market share, you were buying a particular capability you thought would move the business forward.
Which I thought was applicable around the world, and what we were doing was buying market position in France.
Right.
You know, these guys work with Auchan, Leclerc, Carrefour.
So they were already there, so best of both worlds.
Doing great in France.
Right.
But, you know, it's an interesting thing when you look at, we're a business that will do, give or take, $50 million this year, a bit less probably, but roughly. And as you build and as you grow and as you scale and as you develop marketing capability and you develop cold calling capability and you develop those things and they're all linked to Salesforce and they're performance based and there's just a lot of stuff to crunch your way through, a lot of mistakes to make and so I think for a younger business that is sort of at the start of that, we can just help them make more progress.
Right, make more progress faster. So we're here sitting in your booth at the NRF show. Lovely purple color I've seen now in the present. So what I think you've been to the show before, kind of visited the show, but I heard this is the first time you've actually presented at the show and had a booth. What spurred you to do that? Was it growth? Was it opportunity? It's about time we did it.
Yeah,
what brings you here?
That was scale. At scale, it was about time we did it. You know, we've been very busy. We've seen
at the show today, it's been a good show for you, so to speak.
Existing clients have popped in and said hi, and put names to faces and stuff. People that we talked to a lot have been in. I think you never know. It's a big investment of time, money, people.
You've been working on it for 6 months. I mean, it's been right.
And I think it feels like it's been a good thing to do. I'm glad we did it, and obviously it's not until we do the wash-up.
Sure.
I'm going from here to FMI, so I get a double dip.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that goes and how that compares. But it's been a good thing to do.
Now I'm watching behind you. There's an animated screen behind you with some of your clients. So share who some of your clients are. You've got some in Canada. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, I mean, one of our cornerstone clients is Loblaw, who genuinely, I think, are one of the best at the personalised digital marketing, loyalty development businesses in the world. We then have some businesses in North America, Southeastern Grocers, Giant Eagle, Staples. We have the largest retailer in Australia, Woolies, and then we have quite a variety of the British retailers. So we have Asda, we have the John Lewis partnership, so that's Waitrose and John Lewis. We do some work for Tesco. We do some work for Sainsbury's. So So the UK, and then we have quite a large restaurant, casual dining, and pub business only in the UK. We don't do that anywhere else. Not that we won't one day, but it's yet.
That's where it's.
We concentrate on grocery, drugstores with Canada. Love to do some more drugstore business. And at the moment, our focus is expansion in the USA, expansion in continental Europe. Hence, we bought a business in France.
Yep.
And we have a new regional director based in Germany, and expansion in Asia. We've just started working with IKEA in Indonesia in the last few months, and we now have a colleague based in Singapore, and I did a tour just before Christmas of Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. So we've got a lot of opportunities in geographies that we're not really in.
Yeah.
We were talking about the sales cycle a minute ago. It takes a while, but sort of, that should generate for us the next generation of growth in 18 months, 2-3 years' time.
So let me ask you, with all this global tier one customer base that you have, what insights are you learning yourselves and hearing from your clients? I think, for example, we talked about last time, we've been talking a couple times about what did the COVID era do to loyalty, and what did it do to brand, and what did it do to consumers? And you and I were speculating that at the time it was a little hard to sort out what was a kind of a temporary adaptation to a weird time in our lives versus maybe a structural change. We're in some kind of quasi-post-COVID world now. I think, for example, I've heard some retailers talk about that there's a bifurcation between, and this is something we talk about on my other podcast, buying and shopping, for example. That retailers have buying and then they have shopping. The buying is very transactional. It's not, I'm going to shop online. I want as little friction as possible. I don't really care what brand it is. Versus shopping is I'm more engaged in the process. I'm more brand loyal. I take my time. I'll go to a store. I'll experience it just as you sit back. Data or no data, I mean, you're talking to retailers around the world, which is so interesting. What problems are they trying to solve?
Well, I mean, I think that's true, and I think there is an element of, it is interesting. I'm assuming that somewhere in your list of questions is, what have you seen at the show? And if I can sort of answer to some extent by what I've seen at the show, one of the things that I've noticed is there is a lot of automation, mechanization around making e-commerce in particular profitable, but also more frictionless.
Sure.
So a lot of automated picking machines, a lot of paying without cashing out machines, a lot of storage, pick your parcel up from here type things.
Lockable. I walked by some lockable cabinets and all this self-serve stuff.
So I think a lot of that speaks to this point, the point that you're making about making buying as frictionless as possible. But if, by your definition, if there are not some people who are making shopping interesting,
right,
then that potentially will end up being a problem for bricks and mortar shopping. I think.
Or is it the savior? So let me.
Right? Oh well, it depends what you mean. Go on. Sorry.
Well, I did a tour with retailers yesterday in Manhattan. Took a bunch of Canadian retailers on the tour. Went to a bunch of stores, jammed. people walking around. It had some efficiency parts, right? We went to Uniqlo and it had RFID checkout. But the rest of it was wow, look at this experience. We got tailoring. People were in the shops and they weren't looking for less friction. They were looking for more experience. And the two I think what confuses retailers and analysts sometimes is they don't think the two can coexist in the same place at the same time. And, look, sometimes I want to go and buy a hat. I want to get the hell out of there. Other times, I want inspiration. I'm looking for something else.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think the bar on frictionless. Frictionless.
Sure. If you're going to be frictionless, you got to be frictionless.
But the bar is rising. If you're not frictionless, if you haven't got it, if you can't check it out, if whatever, if the basic building blocks don't work, they're not Amazon proof, then that's a problem.
Right.
So that, I think, those are like table stakes. And of course the trouble is that when you operate purely at table stakes, the only thing you can then do, maybe you can take some more friction out, but that starts to get diminishing returns.
Yeah.
The next thing is, now we're going to something on price.
Yeah.
So that gets, you really get yourself into
a slippery slope.
Hard discount war. That's a hard world.
Yeah.
Off that base of frictionless, if you can genuinely create value for consumers, then that's what we've all been trying all our lives to do. And I do think you have to do that. And I do think that, but the trouble is, if it's not frictionless, then you could, that's just whistling in the wind.
It's almost like frictionless has moved from a differentiator to a table stake.
Correct.
And you're either frictionless if you're not. If you're not frictionless, like go to the RH store in the meatpacking district, 7-floor furniture store, it is not frictionless. It is the opposite of frictionless, but is wildly successful. So the two can kind of coexist.
Yeah, and I think, clearly there are sort of centres of excellence. I think one of the problems is a bit when people come here to this part of the world and they see what's going on and then they go away and say, well, I've seen the future. No, you haven't. You've seen Manhattan. It's not going to work in a suburb of Toronto. It's just, there's not...
And you might not win at it, given the organization.
But I do think that, one of the things I remember when I used to go to Asia, where not all markets that we were in Asia, so, to call Korea an emerging market would have been an absolute insult.
Sure.
But nevertheless, for Koreans, shopping was a leisure activity. And so, and Koreans are obsessed, like maybe we all are, obsessed with their children. So, at an era, and I don't know if it's true now, the children's toys, books, which led to soft seating, which led to a sort of library game, it was an amazing investment in space and in ambience so that people had somewhere to hang out. Because it was a leisure activity.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think that retailers who can can make themselves part of a leisure consideration set. And it was interesting. I worked Saturday morning. I had Saturday afternoon free. A colleague and I said, "Come on, the pound is rubbish, but let's have a bit of New York retail therapy." And off we went.
Yeah.
Well, and he's much more New York savvy than I am. Apart from the fact that half the stores he took me to had closed down, gone, disappeared. So actually, when you looked at the afternoon, as an environment, it was a bit disappointing, because just things that you expected to be there weren't there anymore. And even if they were there, they'd moved and you didn't know where they'd moved to. So you ended up being slightly... Somebody said to me, I'm going to go for a shopping weekend in New York. I might say, well, the pound's rubbish, and by the way, half the shops are shut. So, but I do agree with you, and I was very much struck by... it sounded like you were talking about tailoring. I don't know if you went to Suit Supply. But, Soup Supply, as an example for me, seems to be a business that is a very, very interesting model.
Yeah.
Their prices are certainly not discount, but they're not far from being, high end.
Yeah.
Their level of service, the personal service, this encouragement to book your own personal shopper to deal with you while you're there. Then the fact that they can alter your trousers, take your jacket in, and you can probably go and have a drink and pick it up before you go. I find it very attractive. I think it's very good, and it would appear to me that they're doing. If you look at how their stores are growing out across the world, it would appear to be doing very well. I think there is a lot more opportunity for that, and that majors on the strengths of being able to touch, being able to feel, being able to try it on. One of the other things,
inspiration and experience, right?
And as we were talking earlier on about one of the things I think of this show is making e-commerce more efficient.
Sure.
One of the things I've seen is any number of mirror/camera things that are about sizing. Well, they sort all of that out because there's a guy there who says, no, you want that size, you want it nipped in here at the waist, you want it, works really well, I think. So I agree with you. I think, and the interesting thing is that all the things that have ever been an issue with a retail business, what's our strategy? What's our customer strategy? How do we convince customers that we put them first? How do we convince our employees that it's worth putting the customer? All those things which are sort of not difficult, are not easy to do. You can spend your entire life on doing them.
Yeah.
Now I've got this whole new stream, which is there's a digital stream which it's either should amplify it and be part of it, but there's a whole new capability that you need to have. But that doesn't remove the need for being clear about what your customer strategy is, how you create value for customers, how you engage employees,
how you're differentiating,
how you deliver a differentiated experience.
I was talking to somebody today about this axis of differentiation and relevance. Because you see lots of differentiation, but you better make sure you're on a relevance scale, or you're just wasting your time. Well, this has been a great conversation. Last question for you: if I want to learn more about Eagle Eye or get in touch with you, how do I do that?
EagleEye.com, I guess.
Right.
And we'd love to talk to you. I've got a book, Omnichannel Retail, which sort of gives some of my views about how you do this stuff. But just get in touch. We've got offices nearly all over the world.
Yeah. You have offices in Canada, right?
We do.
So
in Toronto.
Right.
And
right on.
We pride ourselves on, interestingly, having sort of spent my entire life thinking about the issues we've been discussing, and then bringing that to a technology company. What I believe is that it's people in the technology company to create all the value. So we have to put our people first, so that they're able to put the customer first. And so one of the things I would pride our business on is we tend to meet very nice people. We know which way is up, but they're charming, they're pleasant, they're helpful, they're energetic, they wear purple. What's not to like?
What's not to like?
Thanks for coming. Lovely to see you. And I wish you safe travels too.
Thank you very much.
Take care. All the best.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure to check out my other retail industry media properties, Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis, and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, president of Emmy LeBlanc & Company Inc., Maven Media, and keynote speaker. If you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Safe travels, everyone.